Okay, everybody, thank you. Apologies for a slight delay. Everyone's here for Sanitation Solutions to Simple Living. All right, we're going to talk about poop. We're here with Kim Nace today. Phoebe couldn't make it. Kim holds an MA in International Management, Administration, from World Learning, and an MA in Educational Leadership from Keene State College. Why don't you tell us what's exciting about you, and I'll get off the stage. Come on up, Kim.
Thank you. I haven't heard somebody mention those degrees. They seem like ancient history at this point, because I certainly don't really. I'm working with sanitation now. That's a whole different field. I am the co-founder and the executive director of the Rich Earth Institute. We're located here in Brattleboro, and we run the first community-scale urine nutrient recovery project in the country. We have over 100 people participating in that project, and they collect their urine for us. And we collect it and transport it. We treat it through pasteurization, and we apply it to 2 farms on local hayfields here. We're all really happy about how this is working. People feel like it's a very transformative process to begin to collect their urine and to figure out that what comes out of their body is actually a resource, it's not a waste. And our farmers are really pleased with how it produces nice green lush hay in their fields every year. So things are going really well. This is our logo. We call it Bathroom Gothic. We are working at the intersection of sanitation and agriculture. And so it says completing the food nutrient cycle. That's what we're doing. Currently, we all live in a paradigm with a broken cycle. We use a lot of chemical fertilizers to grow our food, and the nutrients that go, of everything that we eat, go right through our bodies and out into a flush toilet usually, and out into our water systems. So at Tiny House Festival, we're going to talk a little bit about the small variety solutions. But what I wanted to show you is that we have nutrients and human waste, and these 2 pie charts that you can see there, they're color-coded. So from wherever you're sitting, you should be able to understand what the yellow part is and what the brown part is. Okay, that's right. It's color-coded, and on the left, we're showing you when it comes out of your body and it's in liquid form, or when it first comes out of your body. That's how much quantity of urine you have to feces. What comes out of your body annually. A lot more urine, right? A lot less feces. Of course, 4 out of 5 flushes are for urine. But if you dry everything out of your body that comes out of your body, you will be very surprised to find out that twice as much solids are located in the urine as in the feces. So that's kind of counterintuitive. We aren't really used to that idea, but that's the way it is. And the other piece that I wanted to show you, did that flip? It did? Okay. All right, so what's in the left-hand chart shows you how much nitrogen is in each of those components. So of all the nitrogen that comes out of your body, the majority of that, as you can see, is coming out in your urine. And the same is true with phosphorus. That tells you that the majority of the nutrients that go through our bodies come out in our urine, and it's a really opportunity for us because our bodies also naturally separate the 2 substances. We can, at the source, separate poop and pee. This is our broken cycle. On the bottom here on the left, you can see chemical fertilizers. That takes a lot of energy to produce. We use the Haber-Bosch process to pull nitrogen out of the atmosphere, and uses methane to do that. Very energy-intensive process. The other thing that we do for producing chemical fertilizers is we mine phosphorus, and it's in a limited supply, and it's like oil. You know, we're going to reach a place where we don't have it anymore. So we really need to recycle it rather than send it off into waterways. And on the other end, for what we do after we poop and pee into water, it either goes to a septic system or a wastewater treatment plant. If you live on centralized sewer, you have the good fortune of, you are able to flush and forget. But all those wastes go down to a treatment plant that are located near rivers, and treatment plants are very expensive to run. To give you an example, Brattleboro 4 years ago completed a $32 million upgrade to our wastewater treatment plant. We only have 12,000 people in this town, so imagine what that's costing the tax base. It's a very expensive thing. It's really not a sustainable system. And we thank our wonderful wastewater treatment plant operators and the people who do this because it's keeping us safe right now. But we do recognize that a lot of things are flowing out into the river that we could be capturing and using as a resource. This is our design. It's a closed cycle from where you excrete to where you go back to fertilize on a farm. We do a sanitizing step. We have a permit with the state of Vermont, and we pasteurize the urine before we apply it to our fields. Every day, each one of us produces enough nutrients from our urine alone to bake a loaf of bread, to grow wheat and bake a loaf of bread. So essentially, every day, you're flushing a loaf of bread down the toilet. I don't know if you can see this very well. If you can't see it well, you can stop by our booth. You know, we're providing toilets here today. We are collecting urine from everybody who's coming here. This will all go to our farms. We have a male urinal that we imported from Europe. And plus we have 4 different toilets where we're collecting urine, and we have 1 sawdust composting toilet as well. So it's a divided bowl, and I don't think you can see it very well, but there is one over at the booth if you want to see it. So I'm here to talk about the 2 varieties that I would like to recommend to people for their tiny houses. We talked this over quickly, Abe and I, my research partner. And what we really recommend in a tiny house is that you do this practice of separating urine and feces, because when you do that separation, the composting process works much more smoothly. Otherwise, you get a very liquid slurry together, and it takes longer for the composting to work. But if you separate them, then you can dispose of the urine. You separate them and dispose of them differently. So the one that we recommend, and I don't have one of these here today, it's called Nature's Head. Many of you have probably heard of this. I like this one because it has the container for the urine right at the front, and you can just simply pull it out of the toilet and empty it. It also has a crank in the back there, and that's what turns the compost. They also add, well, I'll tell you in a minute. A lot of my text didn't quite come out. You can't see that. So some of the pros of the Nature's Head is that it has the crank that you can make the compost turn, which is something it really needs to do. It also uses kind of a peat co-composting material in it that makes the process work more quickly. And it also, as I said, has this removable urine tank. The other one, which we do have over at the booth, if you want to come and see it, is a separate. It has a little button on the toilet seat that when you sit down, it opens the chute for where the feces goes and the toilet paper and compost, or the wood shavings. And you just pull the whole thing up to lift out the bucket. Some people put a biodegradable bag into that bucket to collect the feces and to move it out. So now I have to talk about the harder issue. Let me see if there's anything else there. There's really not, you can't see. That's it. That's it for slides. So the harder issue around tiny houses is what's legal and what's not legal about disposing of human waste. And it's a very difficult and tricky issue. And our organization is working on regulatory pathways for making the use of urine easy and feasible and legal. In the state of Vermont, we are able to do that already, and we are sharing our permits with people in other states around New England who are trying to replicate some of this work in other places. What's interesting about our sanitation rules throughout the country is that we have great federal regulations to protect the public health, but every state regulates this differently. Some places you have your own community public health officer whose job it is to go and inspect septic systems at the point of sale when a house is turning over. Other states, we're working in Michigan, they have no regulation for septic systems in their whole state. They're just beginning to write these for the first time. So as I can tell you, that it's just a very complex and kind of a chaotic pathway to try to figure out what's legal. I can tell you that for tiny houses, and once you put it on the ground and have a foundation for a small house, and then you're in a different category than if you're moving your house around. And if you're moving your house around, it's sort of like a mobile home. But most mobile homes dispose of their liquid waste, or their sanitary waste, through a liquid system where they get it pumped out. So if you're going to use a dry composting system, which is very sustainable and recommended, the regulation is something that you have to do your own research in wherever you happen to live to see what your regulators will approve. So there's a few minutes left, and I'd just like to have time for questions. Yes?
I have a question about I know about, I've been a biology major at some point, and one thing I learned in that class, some of my classes, was that a lot of human urine also has been containing a lot of the drug medications that are affecting wildlife. How do you account for that in your composting?
So the question he's asking is about pharmaceuticals, and that's a question that we started this work in 2012. Every single audience, it's almost the exact first question. We all take drugs. We take a lot of drugs. A lot of caffeine in urine. So with the first thing we were very pleased to get was funding by the EPA to actually study that. So in 2014, we spent 2 years with our partners at the University of Buffalo and the University of Michigan, and we were at a large event like this, a little larger. We had 10 portable toilets to collect a large sample from a community gathering. Every single toilet had all of the 16 drugs we were looking for. These are all ones that are persistent in the environment: caffeine, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, anti-anxieties, anti-inflammatories, heart medication, everything's in there. So what we found when we grew our lettuce and carrots was that the soil actually does a lot to degrade these chemicals. And we also think that the UV light when the crops are growing assists in that process of degrading. So the best example I can tell you of our results, we have peer-reviewed results published at universities, and if you ate a pound of lettuce that we grew with this urine every single day for 2,000 years, you would get the equivalent of one 8-ounce cup of coffee, of caffeine. So the other one that I can give you an example of is to get one tablet of acetaminophen, you'd have to eat 140,500 of the carrots that we grew. So what we see now, we've assessed the risks. It's really incredible what we can do as humans, that we have this technology to analyze in parts per million and parts per billion, like where these molecules are traveling in the environment. And so now I can tell you that we've assessed that risk. Now we have to talk about the question of risk perception. There is a small amount of this in these substances. How do we perceive that risk? Currently, all those pharmaceuticals are going in our waterways. So we're doing nothing to remove them at this point. But we've also found in urine and we're doing that this summer. We're doing another major grow out this summer. We're including hormone research into that field trial. And we also know that charcoal filtration will remove 90%, more than 90% of these, any of these pharmaceutical residuals. So we figured it out, how we could treat it, and that's our next step. Yes?
Can you explain your pasteurization process?
Yes, we built our own mobile pasteurizing unit. We use a heat exchanger, and we, to make it as energy efficient as possible. It's 80 degrees centigrade for 1.2 minutes that we have to heat up the urine, and that does exactly what it's supposed to do. It kills the pathogens that would be of concern. Yeah.
So if you're a tiny house owner and you have a composting toilet and you're not giving your urine to a farmer or have a pasteurization, what do you do with it?
So she's asking, what do you do with your urine if you have a tiny house and you want to maybe use it on site, or if you don't have a place like the Rich Earth Institute nearby to donate the urine to? What I can tell you is that the World Health Organization has guidelines. We have these posted on our website. At the international level, the reuse of urine is really an important thing for humans to move to, especially subsistence farmers can do this in very poor countries. So there are guidelines for how you can do this to protect public health. So I refer you to those guidelines on our website. Any other questions? Yes?
Can I just make a statement about one of my favorite books on the topic?
Sure.
So the Humanure Handbook is a great book to get the science behind what do you do with your...
Number one and number two.
With both of those.
So he's referring to Joe Jenkins, who's from Pennsylvania. He and I grew up about 20 miles apart. We still haven't met face to face, but he creates the Lovable Lou, and his book, the Humanure Handbook, has been translated into many languages. It's really the Bible of sanitation for small scale, for reuse. Yeah, we like Joe Jenkins a lot. Yes.
I have spoken with the state of Vermont about septic systems, and so it's okay to use a composting system for black water, but they still require a septic system for gray water. How do you?
Yes, so this is a really common question, and this is something where regulation has not caught up with innovation. And in a lot of places in our lives right now, we're changing a lot of things in how we do them, and our regulations are moving with us. In sanitation, we need to do a lot more work. The problem is that if you put a composting toilet in Vermont, and they are definitely legal to do that, you still have to install a septic system, and we need a lot of public support to keep working around that. And it's really nice in Vermont. Our regulators are very aware of this, and they're interested in alternatives. The Rich Earth Institute is partnering locally here with the Wyndham Regional Commission, and we're doing a feasibility pilot study in the next year with 2 local villages, because everybody has a septic system. Septic system upgrades are very expensive, and septic systems aren't all designed to keep the nutrients out of water. They still leach the nutrients of nitrogen and phosphorus right into our streams and our rivers. So we're going to be doing this report. We're going to go out and look at everything that's going on there, and we're going to figure out if we did urine diversion here, would we be able to extend the life of a septic system, make it not necessary to have, with a composting toilet. What can we push on the regulatory side with this? So that report will be out in about a year. Yes.
So I'm aware of this one young woman, Ariel McLaughlin, in Sinnet. She actually has worms in her composting toilet. She keeps vermicomposting in her composting toilet. I'm wondering if that's something that you could address.
She was asking about putting vermiculture and composting toilets together into one operation. A couple of my board members work for Phoenix Composting out in Montana, and they have these large tanks, and they do use worms in those tanks. I know that in smaller systems, the urine is that worms don't like that too much. If you separate, yeah, there's much more possibility, but the worms don't like urine if you're not separating. Any other questions?
What about the old-fashioned outhouse?
What about it? I've traveled a lot and lived in other parts of the world, and a pit latrine is a really common way to manage sanitation in a lot of parts of the world, and the important thing is to line it, to put a concrete liner in a pit latrine so that those nutrients and those pathogens don't move into well water or other groundwater sources. But the old-fashioned outhouse worked for a lot of people for a long time. We actually have a whole lot more people now. So that's one of the concerns. We live in a little bit more dense situations. And one of the things about our feasibility study is we're looking at the proximity of septic systems and wells and nitrates moving from our septic systems into our well water. So in a rural state like Vermont, where more than half the people use septic systems, it's a concern. I think that dry sanitation systems may be a really critical option for us to all be exploring in the future.
What's the danger of the nitrates into your well?
We have figured out some new health reasons why you don't necessarily want to be drinking nitrate-laden water.
Carcinogenic?
I wish I could tell you off the top of the head which of those specific concerns there are, but I'm sure if you look it up, I don't have that answer. But I think it is. I think it could have to do with certain diseases that we could prevent if we didn't have nitrate in the water.
I would wonder if there's a certain distance away you had your outhouse into your well.
Absolutely.
Plus also, wells usually go down several hundred feet.
Right. Groundwater, you have to understand your hydrology in your area to be able to make these determinations. But the state has regulations about how far from your well your septic system's allowed to be. And in some of these villages, they're not actually in compliance, and they're not. And the state and the people who own the properties are not quite sure how to move forward. Yes.
Any research on whether using urine as a fertilizer repels deer or other rodents?
He's asking about using urine as something to repel deer and rodents and other things around your land. Certainly, many people do that here in Vermont. To keep the deer off their garden, they use their own urine, and that is a very common practice. I don't know if there's any specific research that's been done on that. It's not a vector. it doesn't attract animals. Yeah. So I just want to, oh, yes?
Do you deal with gray water systems at all?
Does our organization do that? No, we don't. There are some really great architects and engineers who are building new gray water systems. California has some new regulations to allow for the gray water systems. So that's a place to look for repeating and copying what they've done. Why reinvent it in all different parts of the country? So we're trying to share resources as much as possible. Yes?
Are there any efforts towards like a national standard, or like is there any effort towards like a national standard for gray water and composting systems?
Nope. I can tell you one thing, that our organization, the International Association of Plumbers and Mechanical Officers, that's called IAPMO, they do our plumbing codes. They did solicit a group around the country to create code language, plumbing code languages for composting toilets and urine diverting composting toilets. That was in 2014. We worked on that for a year and a half with a wonderful national team, and those codes are now out. Finally this year they're out. So there is a code language for plumbers to refer to when someone says, I'm putting this toilet in. So now they have something they can look to, and that is at the national level.
But is that actually incorporated into IRC yet?
What does IRC stand for?
International Residential Code?
No. No.
So it's just a
It's-
guideline for information. for
And
plumbers.
it is for the Uniform Plumbing Code is aware of it. I think those are connected.
But individual states and cities have to still adopt those codes.
Correct.
Because
Yes.
I know my community is like 10 years behind on IRC. So.
Yeah, different states, I think, use the different codes. But this one is, IAPMO is used internationally as well as its specific states in the country. That's my understanding of it. We're hoping in the next year or so to have a nice gathering with some architects and plumbers and start to educate about these new innovative systems that are starting to come out. So I'm sure I've used all my time. Is that correct?
You have about 2 minutes?
Oh, I have 2 minutes. Great. Woohoo! I can talk about this for hours. So if you have any more questions, please let me know. And visit our booth. Yes.
Have you used the pasteurized urine on more than hay fields?
Yes. Have we used the urine on more than hay fields? We started with hay because, of course, that's just something that for public acceptance is going to be much easier. It's an animal crop, and but we've used on our National Science Foundation and our EPA studies, we used carrots and lettuce, and this summer we're adding wheat to the thing. We would love to do more, but for each specific crop that you choose, it's extremely expensive to do this analysis. So, yeah. Another question? Yes.
Do you dilute the urine or you just?
So the question's about diluting the urine. We were funded by USDA for well, this is our 4th time, but we did 3 years of strip trials, and those trials were specifically about whether or not to dilute the urine when we put it on the hay. Our thought was that, well, maybe we will be burning the roots of the hay if we put the urine on without diluting it. If you dilute it, it means your farmer has to carry out all this water around their field, and it's just time consuming and they don't want to do it. So we knew it would be advantageous to farmers if we could put it on in its pure form. We actually are concentrating the urine right now, sometimes by a factor of 5 through reverse osmosis. We have also out in Michigan, we have an installation that does 3 different steps, and we can concentrate urine down to a factor of 20. And we did experiments on a strip trial with the concentrated urine, and it also did not burn. So that was all really good information that in its pure form or even concentrated, it's not going to burn the roots. You have to understand how to apply it also. Like on our crops, we do side dressing on our crops. You don't pour urine on the leafy tops. They're doing that in Latin America. They do spray sometimes of the urine on the plants, but we recommend the side dressing, and that's it. So that's my time, and I appreciate your interest and fascination. It's great for us to be talking about urine. Thank you.